So our first step is just to do some simple searches with Google and see if there are any existing online communities in our market, so we can find out where some of our target customers are just hanging out or spending a lot of their time, as well as talking about things that are related to our market, products and services, new problems, new wants and desires, so on and so forth. In fact, discussion forums and communities where your target customers hang out online and talk about issues related to your market can be some of the best research data that you'll find on the entire internet. It's extremely valuable. It can help you tweak your marketing so you can do a better job at selling to those people. It can help you come up with product ideas to fulfill or solve a certain problem that they have that maybe no one else is currently solving in the market. Or you can also find out about certain products and services that your market is raving about, that they're fans of, certain companies and certain things that those companies do that these people are really, really pleased with. And then it can give you great ideas to improve or tweak your own marketing or the way that you handle customer support or anything else. So there's a gold mine of data to be found in discussion forums, and by looking at just the conversations that your market is having with other people that are interested in the same types of things related to your market. So we're here at Google. We're just going to do some simple searches. So the first thing we just kind of want to look for is to see if there are any discussion forums related to our market. So using our gardening example, I'll just do a simple search for, and by the way, I could do a search for gardening forums. In fact, let me do that search first to show you something. So I'll type gardening forum. You could also type gardening discussion forum or gardening message board. Those are some just variations of what they call online forums. But I'm going to type in gardening forum and I'm going to do a Google search. Now see, up comes Garden Web, the internet's garden community. That's probably a really good site for us to go and find some of our target customers and to see what they're talking about and just kind of get the pulse of the market. A helpful gardener garden forum, garden forums, organic gardening. As you can see, there are just tons of them. And this is just on the first page. So imagine if we click to the second page of results, there's just more forums and more forums. Now, most markets are like this. Most markets where it's any kind of subject matter that people are passionate about or really interested in or just involved with, they're finding places online to talk to others that are also interested in the same topic or have the same type of problem, so on and so forth. So forums are usually all over the internet for most markets. Depending on your niche, you may find a market where there are no discussion forums, where it's something that people aren't really talking about. And that's okay. It doesn't mean that your marketing is going to fail. It doesn't mean that you can't be successful with this course. It just means that you'll be missing that little piece. But for most markets, you're going to find these communities and these discussion forums where your market's hanging out. As I briefly discussed in the Foundation CD, in the case that you can't find discussion forums or you can't find kind of many answers to some of these questions that you're going to be doing with some of these exercises that I'm giving you, these action steps, oftentimes it's necessary to broaden your market. With gardening, I kind of briefly talked about before that gardening is actually a subset of a larger market, which would be kind of home improvement or things related to people that own homes, because typically gardens are done by people that own their own home. So if I couldn't find any garden forums, then my next searches would be kind of the next step up the ladder. I'd search for kind of home improvement forums, and I'd probably find that somewhere within that community, there's a subset talking about gardening. So if you come to do these searches for your market and you don't find communities right away, or you're just not finding much, try to go up the ladder, so to speak, into whatever your market is a subset of. Almost every market is a subset of a bigger market, and you can just move your way up the chain until you find communities related to that larger market, and then try to find out if there's a subset for your specific market, and if it's big enough and there's enough activity there or value for you to get out of it, for you then to go get involved with or use for research data. So you can start by just using kind of the main topic name, like for our gardening tool store, it's just gardening. So you can take your topic name and then add forum to it like we've done here, and just do a Google search and find some good results. So as you can see, we found a whole bunch of gardening forums, and we'd want to make a list of all these. When it comes to doing proper market discovery and constantly keeping up one of the things you're going to learn, let me sidebar here real quick. One of the things you're going to learn in this course is that to produce good content, to be actively involved with marketing your business on the internet, to grow your traffic, grow your sales, and grow your business, you're going to have a research department. We're really going to get into this when we get into the Content Factory CD, when we really talk about creating content and putting things out there that are driving people to our site and hopefully getting people to share our stuff, and then which snowballs and drives even more people and then just grows and grows and grows. But we're going to have a research department. That's where it all starts. Ideas and concepts and things that we just have in mind that either competitors are doing. We're keeping track of competitors. We keep track of what people are talking about in our market. We keep track of the latest product news and what other companies are doing in our market, so on and so forth. And then we'll fine-tune and take things from that research and from those ideas to formulate them into concepts that we should create content around, so on and so forth. And all of that will be evolved and kind of take shape according to what other people are successfully doing with content. And it touches on what I've already talked about. We're going to take the shortcuts to find what's already working in our market, in your market, and then we're going to go from there to either do it just like it so we can kind of get the same results, or to even differentiate and do it better and hopefully get better results. But this example of finding these forums, you want to keep basically a long list of all the forums that you can find. Now, certainly some of these forums may only have 5 or 6 people talking about things. And just like we talked in the Foundation CD, the 80-20 rule applies here. There may be thousands and thousands of these forums, but maybe only, 20 of them really get much use. And so you can kind of ignore all the others. On the internet, like I talked about when we went over the Foundation and really touched on that 80-20 rule concept, there are so many ways out there to drive traffic, so many methods and tricks and little secrets people have figured out, and little sites to get links on, and places to advertise, and of course places to reach your target market. But you have to keep that 80-20 rule in mind. You can spend hours and hours and hours of your time messing with all these little sites, or if you spent 1% of when we get into the keyword science, the keyword research in the next CD, that's really going to kind of give you the tools that you need specifically to generate traffic from content. The keywords that you use are really going to come into that, and following trends and some other things that we're going to get into. But look at this. This is phenomenal data. Again, piggybacking. This company, for example, has done all the hard work for us. And I imagine this was a lot of trial and error. They had people suggest new types of, new topics and new categories. Because I imagine when they first started their site, this site's probably 10 years old. they didn't have all these categories. People kept suggesting them, or new things happened in the market, new discoveries, new types of science. And so they created new topics for them. But again, let's not reinvent the wheel. Here they've done all the work for us. And I imagine that these topics in this list cover pretty much 90% of the whole world of gardening, if not 100%. And this is why you want to come and do some research in the beginning before you start creating content or setting up pages optimized for the search engines, or even advertising and setting up ads in Google AdWords, or buying media, or doing anything to drive traffic to your site. Even if you have an existing site where you've already done keyword research, maybe you've been online for years, you already get traffic, you already have sales, you need to revisit this market discovery process that I'm teaching you here, because it's incredibly valuable. So many people are already marketing online. They've been getting traffic for years. They have a good business and they've been doing these things, but they're overlooking some of these little things that I'm pointing out right now. And it's the difference in their business kind of growing at a 10% pace each year, or tripling, or growing by 10 times and being able to dominate their market. So all these things I'm saying, even if you're familiar with some of them, just pay close attention. If you know all the stuff, or if you know some of these methods, then okay, that's fine. But pay close attention, because one of these little things that you're not doing could make the difference in bringing in thousands of new customers and potentially millions of dollars. So let's get back on it. So I just came to visit one site, and you'll want to visit all these different sites that you find when you're doing your research. You want to notice the things about them, what topics they list, what are people talking about, so on and so forth. I mean, just looking at this, I have a topic list for the next 100 years to write articles about when it comes to gardening. In fact, I'd probably want to specialize and go in a smaller area of some of these topics, because there are just so many of them. But you kind of get the picture here. Great research data. Here are their main subject areas kind of broken down. If you were going to set up a gardening discussion forum, we're going to talk more about that when we get into some of the social strategy and some of the other things in this course. You may want to set up your own community sites. You may want to set up software that runs your own discussion forums, because it's a great way to get people to be creating content for you. Because as they post and as they say things, those create pages that can get indexed in the search engine. It's not easy to get a forum going, to get it jump-started. It's kind of a catch-22. Nobody wants to go to a forum where there's no one there talking. It's like they're talking to themselves. But I'll give you a few tricks and mention a few methods that you can use to kind of jump-start a forum in your market. But you'd want to come to other forums that exist and see kind of what their main sections are and what they're talking about, and that can give you a head start. So back to what we were talking about. Didn't mean to get off track there, but that's just some valuable stuff for you. So we'd start with that search, gardening forum. We'd come down and just go and look at all these different forums that we can find. And we'd make a note of them, visit them, and just keep what's called a swipe file, or kind of a research file of all the information that we can find on the existing communities in our market. But there's another little trick you can use here. You could just type list of gardening forums and hopefully find someone that's compiled a list of gardening forums and have already done a lot of this research. Again, it's about piggybacking on other people's work. So many people have already done a lot of this other research, a lot of this trial and error with their marketing. And so they can just shortcut it, and you can find out right away what works or what doesn't, or get the information that you want. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, but let's try it. List of gardening forums. So let's see if someone's actually put a list together that can either give us additional gardening forums that we may not find on our own. You still want to do that other search, but let's just see. So first one, list of garden and bloom compost ingredients. That doesn't look like a list of actual forums. It just has those terms. Viewing a list of forums. This doesn't really look like it either. Sometimes people call their discussion forum like forums, plural, because some forum sites have little sub-discussion areas, and so they call those forums, plural, but it's really just one site, one discussion community. So I don't really see anyone that's compiled. Actually, here's one. And I was cheating because there's one back up here I want to show you as well. But here looks like a list that maybe someone's put together. So let's click this. It may or may not be. It may just be a list of the subforums in there. community sites, message boards, forums. This is the mother lode, as they say, exactly what we were looking for. And look, here's Garden Web that we just visited that has that #1 ranking. So this is probably 80–90% of the better forums in this market. And so we would want to copy this page with all these links and then go and visit them individually and see what's there and what we can learn from them. Another place you want to look for communities, and again, we're going to talk about the social networks and their sub-communities later on in this course on the social strategy disc. But for now, just for discussion forums, Google has this thing called Google Groups. And Google Groups, it's kind of a web discussion, but it can also be an email discussion where people can post to a listserv, which then sends the email out to everyone that's a member of the list. And people can kind of have discussions by email. So it's online and it's an email. But if you go to Google Groups, you can search for, we'll just search for gardening, your topic of your market. And if there are any Google Groups with people talking about your market, it'll show up here. So there are some. Rec.Gardens. Some of these are old Usenet forums, if you're familiar with Usenet. It's basically like a global discussion forum network that the internet used to be made up of, or part of the internet. It used to be really popular. So you can come to Google Groups and you can find links to different discussions and different kind of email communities where they're discussing it through an email list. Some of them are discussing things through the web. A lot of those email discussions get posted on the web, so you can look through archives. You can find all kinds of great information, just like you can in the forums. So you'll want to search not only for forums, but also you'll want to search Google Groups. It's a great piece of research data. So that's it. Those are some quick tricks so you can find discussion forums in your market. And you can just replace those searches with, in this example, gardening message boards, gardening discussions, and some other words related to forums. You should find a bunch if you just do market plus forum, but you also want to do list of market forums. You can also do list of message boards and then the topic, so on and so forth. But do that and you should find a bunch of forums in your market. If you don't, remember, go up a level for whatever market your little market is a subset of and work yourself up the chain until you find out where some communities are, where people are at least talking somewhat about your market.